case anybody happens to listen to this later, I think it'd probably be helpful to do some introductions. I'll start by saying that I'm Katie, and I'm a trans mom game designer. I was diagnosed with ADHD like a couple months ago. My doctor said on a scale of 1 to 10, I had an 11 in terms of severity. So I got bad. And that's me. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves?
Sure, I'll go next. I'm Matthew Hocker. I help run things at Break My Game and also am a self-publisher. I have had ADHD for quite a long time and was diagnosed 8 years ago now, and so have been adjusting to all those different aspects still. It goes in and out, so we'll dive into that later on.
Thank you. Awesome. Would anybody else like to introduce themselves?
Sure. I'm Christian Beck. So far as this is why I was nervous of coming here, because I actually tried to get a diagnosis for ADHD, and he was like, "Well, we've got a graph here of the results of your test, and if it's above a 90, that's significant, and you hit 85." And I'm like, "So I'm almost significant." So I don't know, but I do personally feel at least that I have trouble with some stuff. And since he said executive dysfunction, that I know I have issues with, so I figured I'd at least stop by.
Yeah. This is a round table. Like, I personally believe that a lot of like things that people with ADHD do to help manage their executive function can translate easily to even like neurotypical people. And so if you have any sort of trouble like managing tasks or staying focused or like directing your energy, like this is open to you or open to anyone. You don't necessarily have to be diagnosed. A lot of people with ADHD struggle to get diagnosed just because it requires a lot of executive function to get there. So like yeah, the whole purpose of this is to just share some tips and tricks for people who struggle with executive dysfunction. So like what do I mean when I say that? Like executive dysfunction manifests in a lot of ways, and it doesn't necessarily always come up in the terms of like having trouble like paying attention, but that is a common symptom, which is why that's the name of it. But it would really be more accurate to call it an executive dysfunction disorder instead. But words, that's where that's where they've landed. But like it could result in lots of things like just having time blindness, having trouble scheduling things, having trouble like receiving like feedback, like emotional deregulation, and just making careless mistakes. So the focus of this workshop roundtable is to just talk about the various ways that we have learned to sort of manage our symptoms, how we take advantage of our ADHD, and other things in that regard. Before we get started, does anybody have any like questions or requests on the direction this roundtable goes? Okay, then I'm just gonna pick from this list of stuff that I've written down hours before this workshop because I have ADHD. So one of the things that I personally found that I had a lot of trouble with is just keeping myself focused on a task, because a lot of times I will get like a ping or a notification and and then my mind is like, it's time to work on that. It's time to fix that issue. and and sometimes it's like I can't exactly turn off like all of those notifications. Sometimes I might be expecting a phone call or something, but so some of the ways that I handle that is there's a few tricks that I use. One of my favorites lately has just been streaming myself, and what I've heard in some like ADHD circles, I've heard this being called body doubling, where you're just like working in the presence of somebody else who is like passively like observing you, like not even like strictly managing you, making sure that you're staying on track, just somebody who's not actively pulling your attention away, and it's just able to like observe you, because just that like extra set of eyes is like sometimes it's enough accountability for you to like be like that's right, I'm doing the thing, and I'm not going to spend 3 hours scrolling on Twitter. Like, I've noticed some of that happening at the Break My Game like servers. Some people popping into like voice chats and streaming themselves working, and I feel like that's like a form of that. Does anybody have any experiences like doing that?
Yeah, I've done some similar things in the past. I will tell you that years ago, this is in a similar vein. One of the tricks that I had for getting work done in school was I would create a Google Doc and I would invite somebody into the Google Doc with me, and I would talk to them while I was working on something, and then like they would poke fun at what I was writing, or they're like, I don't like that sentence. I'm like, that's a good point, but it kept me focused because I had that peer pressure to do the thing. Even things like working out and stuff like that. I think this goes into my extrovert nature, but having that other individual there can help keep you on track sometimes. And I think that showcasing things like, like on a stream or something like that, or just having a discussion can build into that. The key thing there, though, is not getting distracted into the other people that you're communicating with, which is its own struggle sometimes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like that's the only thing you have to be careful of, is that they're not pulling your attention too much into other stuff. That could happen sometimes with like when I'm streaming, if somebody's like very active, then it's like oh this isn't helping me anymore. So yeah, it's good to have some boundaries. I think this is like the same kind of energy that people who work on like books and stuff at like coffee shops have, like this, like just working in the presence of other people. So it's you're a lot more self-conscious about like goofing off. Sometimes other things that I would do to sort of stay on task is time myself when I do go on social media. Like I I was like in a very comfortable spot of like almost no Twitter and no Facebook and stuff, but part of game designing is that you kind of have to be very public, because you kind of have to like market yourself and market your like games and like have like a presence. So you don't really have, so a lot of game designers don't really have the luxury of like disengaging with social media, which is really dangerous when you have ADHD, because like I've heard it described as like a a bucket with a hole that you're like trying to fill. Like it's like this constant, like it's this endless stream of like stimulation, and it's like good stimulation, but it's not quite enough dopamine to like be satisfying. So you're just like constantly scrolling and like constantly tweeting, constantly getting notifications. And so so sometimes if I know I'm not like expecting like an urgent call or something that's really valuable to me is like do not disturb mode, at least on Android. I'm not sure if Apple has something like that, but I really like it because you could set a timer for it too. So because otherwise I would forget that I have it on do not disturb, and then I'll miss some like important messages later. But it's sort of like it's like its own Pomodoro timer, which is like another common like ADHD like thing, another ADHD tool, where you set like a kitchen timer and you tell yourself for 30 minutes, for 25 minutes, you're going to focus on exclusively on one task. And if anything else pops into your mind, you just write it down to address later, and you keep focusing on your one task. And then once the 25 minutes are up and your timer buzzes, this is what I've got. I got like a little fox timer. Once it buzzes, then you take a 5-minute break and take it from there. Probably start another Pomodoro. I do them kind of backwards. I start working on a task, and then I set like a little Pomodoro timer for a break, because otherwise it going off every 25 minutes is distracting to me. So I could like focus on work for like 2 hours. Then I'm like, I need to check social media. I'm going to set like a 10-minute timer to do that. Does anybody else have any, or tricks that they use, or any experience with timers or tricks that they use to help monotask or focus on their tasks?
Yeah, real quick, I'll show it off. I have a little clock here. It's a hexagon clock I've been using recently, and so it has different time intervals. I kind of wish I could customize it a little bit more, but it's still useful. And so 30 minutes, 5 minutes, 15 minutes, which is helpful. And so you just rotate the clock and set it down on the table to set the new timer, and then it goes off. I really like this a lot. It's very nice to have. The only downside is I'm a fiddler, so I will fiddle with it to an extreme, sometimes ruining my own system. But as long as I keep it away from me, it is a very useful tool. The other thing that so this is sort of a pro and con thing, right? So I have found over the years that what helps me do the things is the consequence of not having the thing, which goes my tool is peer pressure, which is, I guess I'm going back to. So if I sign up for one of the weekly events here, for example, I'm like, well, I'm gonna be there, so I gotta have something to show. And so that kind of has helped me keep on track. The downside, of course, is that when, I guess in my younger years, when I did things like that, if I had anxiety about something and I missed out, then it was much harder to get back on that wagon again. But yeah, so my biggest tools are probably the consequence of not doing a thing, which isn't really a consequence, just like, well, I didn't get it done on time, but I need to get it done on time, so I want to do that. And then, similar to you, little tiny timers that I can adjust or set up near me, so I can kind of manage myself better.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, the fillingness is definitely like a concern. I've definitely messed up the time on my thing, just holding it and twisting it like, no. Like,
Oh, sorry, Katie. I'm sorry. It was just mentioned in text chat. Jesus mentioned this, the writeordie.com website. So when you write on the website, if you're like getting distracted, the screen turns red. And so it kind of like pulls you back in. I've never heard of this, and I'm looking at it now. It's pretty interesting.
oh, that sounds amazing. Oh, yeah, this sounds like an incredible tool. Writeordie.com. Okay, I might have to take a look at this. Okay, I think it's good to have yourself like a little toolbox of things to try, because sometimes part of ADHD is just getting bored of what you're currently using and whatever system you currently have, and then falling by the wayside. I was like really, I started using like this journal that I have literally attached to my hip, and I was like using it very religiously, and then I got bored of it and I stopped writing in it entirely. So sometimes just having like a little cycling repertoire of things to try, because you get bored of stuff and and need to change it up, keep things interesting for yourself. Shoot, I need to like be more consistent about writing down my thoughts, because I've already forgotten some of the things I wanted to like touch upon in response to what you had mentioned. I'm gonna take a minute.
You're good. I was also going to mention having something to fiddle with in general has been very helpful for me. I have like next on my table next to my computer, I have random little gadgets or things that I can mess around with in my left hand while I am doing something. It just helps. I don't know how to put it. Like it helps me just exert some sort of energy into the world when I'm sitting down or standing up or doing anything. So I'm not getting distracted by other things like my phone or something along those lines. So it's something I can just release energy into and not get, but also something that I don't really get caught up into an extreme to a point where I'm just solely focused on it.
Right, yeah. Like that's like the value of like the fidget toys, right? Like it gives your like bodies like just enough stimulation that you're not focusing all of your attention on it. You're just focusing enough that like your body's like okay, because like the heart of like the problem is that your brain is like not like handling like the dopamine levels like a neurotypical person's would. So it's like it's a lot more like hungry for that dopamine, to the point where like that it manifests as you being like, okay, I need to do something else, or I'm bored of this. My eyes are going to wander. So like if you're giving that stimulation, if you're drip feeding in through like something like a fidget toy, like one of these, I've got like a bunch that I have on hand depending on like the like how much like focus, like how much attention I need like for the task at hand. I have like varying levels of like fidgety toys that I use. Yeah, that one. That one's like one of my favorites because it's like very quiet, it's very small, it's very compact, and I could just like take it with me and like I'm talking to somebody and it's not like super like obvious and clicky and loud like this thing is. Like this thing is like if I'm like alone at home, then I love it. I love the clicking and I'm just like walking around the house like but like when I'm with like when I'm in front of like a teacher, I don't want to be like click click.
I'll say I have as you guys brought that up, I realized that in my hands was a I've been fiddling with this one a lot, but it's a phone tripod, like just with a little like I bought it for taking like for recording video for a game actually, but it's just the size of like my hand basically, and the little legs on the tripod are like stiff enough that you can, hold them in place, and so I just keep opening and closing the tripod basically with each of the legs individually, and it is not meant for this, but boy, I just keep messing with it, and I've got a policy that I can't have chip clips in my room anymore because if I finish eating a bag of chips and I start playing with it, I've snapped so many chip clips and just so anytime I realize I have one in my hands, I just chuck it behind me, away from me so that I don't break it. But yeah, it I would say it helps me fidget. I don't really do it often when I'm like with other people. Usually I'm like talkative enough that I can stay in the conversation and everything, but times like this or when I'm at a playtest session and I just need something to do with my hands, especially if I need to be paying attention, I'll find myself just it changes depending on what it is. It's usually this thing, but occasionally I do have a fidget spinner within eyesight right now, but this doesn't quite it when I need it, but it's pretty rare. I have had times where I'm like, I hope they can't hear this through the mic when I'm spinning my fidget spinner, but I don't think you guys can. But yeah.
Yeah, Jesus is saying chip clips are impossible not to break, and this is
Yeah.
true. Even when I'm being a proper lady, I will break chip clips just through daily use. I think sometimes it's fine to have something that you break and replace. Maybe not too much, but like in moderation. But yeah, like, God damn it. What was I saying? Yeah, totally. The improvised fidget devices is totally a thing. The only reason I did so well in school, I think, is because I had developed this habit of disassembling and reassembling my pen in class. Like sometimes those things that you just happen to have on hand, like that's why it's like such a like stereotype that we're like clicking pens all the time because they're like these improvised fidget devices that help us focus.
I
So
used to do origami in high school, which is requires actual concentration to do, unless there was one particular one that you just need to fold the like sticky notes the exact same way 100 times and you can assemble it into one giant thing. And so I would just do that. And like at the time I was like, oh, this is fun. I like doing origami and make something cool I can give to my friends. And like, I'm realizing right now that that was probably kind of more of like a fidget thing. I do have trouble with actual fidget toys though, just because it kind of brings me out of it a bit, where I'm just like, I realize that I'm fidgeting, and so it feels unnatural, or it feels just like, oh, I don't know, maybe it's once again because the fact that I'm not like officially diagnosed or whatever, but it feels like I'm like succumbing to something, and I know I need to just kind of break from that like preconceived notion, but like my partner is like properly diagnosed with it, and she does have a fidget toy that I bought her, and I see her use it every so often, and she's very happy to have it. On a very rare occasion, I'll ask to borrow it. But like, I don't know, it just feels weird for me to like have something for that because I'll have to like look at it and think about it and be like, am I using this? As opposed to just anything else where I'll just pick it up and start doing stuff with it.
Oh yeah, totally. I also had that sort of like weird stigma with like fidget toys before. Like I was like diagnosed and before I did like a bunch of research on like different things to do to help like cope. I was just like I like why would I need like a fidget spinner? Like what this is like a silly this is like a toy for children. There's like so much like stigma around ADHD like in general and I feel like I feel like overcoming that societal pressure and that cultural stigma is like such a huge part of the of of figuring out what works for you and going with what works for you even if like other people are like why don't you just do it this way? Why don't you just do this? Because like so much of our culture is like built around expecting you to be able to just sit still and like focus on a thing that's like slow and boring and when some of us just need to do things a little bit differently and it's fine and it works for us and it's not that we're not paying attention, we just need to do things a little differently. Like the only way I'm able to fold laundry is if I'm also watching cartoons at the same time. That's just how my brain works.
I have to put mine literally on my bed so that I can't go to sleep unless it's folded.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a big one. Like putting stuff like physically in the way.
See, you all are one step beyond me. I leave my clothes in the dryer and pull them out when it's time to put them on. But for most clothes, and then everything else just goes into a basket. But I think I'm fortunate in that my clothes are just giant and just I don't know. So my partner and I like we're just indifferent to it for the most part. And her clothes are just so much tinier than mine, and it's like if nothing gets mixed up or confused, like I know where my stuff is, and she knows where her stuff is. I just pull it out, and it's fine. I've given up on clothes folding. I think we tried it for a couple months, and then I think we just both silently gave up, and we were okay with that. We accepted it and embraced it. And when I talk to folks, like, oh, we just got these new dressers for our clothes to fold them up. I'm like, that's so awesome. And I'm like, I'm so excited for you. Mine are in my dryer. Maybe I'll put them on tumble again so they get warm and cozy tomorrow morning so I can just be nice and toasty. So I've just embraced it. Like it's just what I do. And I think I have the privilege of being able to do that because we don't have anyone else that we have to take care of. We're not doing anything like that. So it's over. I've given up.
That has got to be the best laundry hack I've ever heard. Like, don't have a dresser for your clothes. Just have like a dryer that you pull it out of. That's a great idea.
See,
Like,
I live in an apartment complex, so I don't really have that option.
I do too, but we're fortunate enough to have them in our
Oh, wow.
yeah, I know. I was pretty surprised myself. I was like, all right, well this is pretty groovy. This is great. But yes, I've been in that situation too. And I definitely that you don't have that option there. Though some people acted like they did, which was really cool. So, I've seen that too, and so maybe I should have given that a shot still.
I'd be afraid that I'm taking my clothes. But I love that. So one of the one of the things that I let's see. So one of the things that I struggle with. Okay, I wanted to ask others this because I still like struggle so hard with this. Like I have like a very serious perfectionism problem where I will just obsess over like what I'm working on until it's just right. And I haven't figured out a way to stop myself from doing that because I will obsess over it for like an hour. Oh, over like the stupidest things that don't need to be perfect. And I feel like this is incredibly relevant for game design when you have to make sloppy, thrown together prototypes. So, does anybody have any tips on that?
So, like tips on like just putting together the thing. I may have
Tips.
misinterpreted.
I think tips on like, I guess not wasting like several hours over like stupid minute details that like nobody else cares about. Like the other day, I finally got like this artwork that I commissioned for like one of my games, and I was like getting it ready to put on the cards, and I was like, huh, like the suits aren't aligned in the exact same position on each card. Like I'm just gonna go and tweak them all, and like, oh, like I probably spent like an hour tweaking like these icons positions by pixels, like 10 pixels or something like that. And it was like, and afterwards I was like, that was so stupid. Why the hell did I waste so much time doing that?
So I think that there's two paths that I've taken with that sort of stuff. The first path is I refuse to get good at certain things, which means I never am stressed about putting my skills to the test at those things because I'm just not I'm just not that person. I'm not the graphic designer. It's fine. I'm good. It's not in my hands. It's out of my hands. I have no control over this element. But the other thing that I kind of keep in mind, and I think this is just me making the call to do that, is that I when I encounter those details, I just from previous experience, I've learned that I'm going to change everything every time, no matter what. That my I tell myself that no matter what, after this event, even if I change nothing, I'm going to change everything, which just takes away this responsibility for me because I'm not going to focus on I guess as much on those things. I have that goal in mind, and so nothing else matters. And so if I know I'm going to change everything, or if I know I'm really all I care about is this one thing, then all the other stuff is just a means to an end to get to that one thing, or accepting that it's all going to go scorched earth anyway, and it's just going to reset. So I kind of have those two thoughts when I do things. When I in the late stage of games, when the graphic design stuff becomes more relevant, excuse me, then it's really more focused on that and triple, quadruple, infinitely double checking things over and over again. But I like in the early, mid, and even mid to late stages, I just assume it's all going to go away, or it's all of that stuff doesn't get me to my goal, which is why I've been able to push it aside for me personally.
It's yeah, embracing doing things imperfectly is such like a valuable skill, I think. So much so for prototyping. I need to think about it that way. Like this is all gonna get trashed, so I might as well just move on to the next step. I think that's a really valuable way to look at it. Thank you.
I would say I kind of have a similar thing of where basically just kind of change your goals, I would say, of like if your goal is to make, a finished card or whatever, that's really difficult. And at that point, the pixels technically matter because that would be the difference between a finished card and an unfinished card. But if your goal is to get a card that you can play with, then those pixels don't matter. And so then all of a sudden you don't care. Like all of my playtest cards look awful. But until somebody says that they can't play the game because of how awful those cards look, then it doesn't matter. It still gets all the stuff on the table. Part of this is maybe because I'm a programmer, and so I just kind of like, who needs art? Who needs things to look nice? All the things interact in the way they need to. And that's like you said that it was like a thing that was specifically difficult in board game design, and I actually one of the reasons why board game design appeals to me is because personally I feel like it's not. I feel like there's so many because the the whole industry is based around like iterative design and do something like fail faster. Like I have the fail faster journal. Haven't used it. I think maybe once, but I have the Fail Faster journal, and like that's one reason why it really appeals to me is that like it's the whole point of making games is to basically never finish it. And I'm like, that's great. I suck at finishing things and I never want to finish something and I am terrified of finishing something. So why not just, join in a profession that is based around never finishing anything? And like also like Jesus says, my teacher once told me the secret to mastering art is to learn to fail as fast as possible. And it's like, yeah, that's fail faster, get everything done, figure out what's wrong. That kind of butts heads a bit with something you mentioned earlier about like feedback issues, but But for right now, yeah, basically, so my two suggestions are either make your goals smaller or make them so big they're literally impossible. Because if they're so big they're literally impossible, then you just can never complete it, so you just can't even, you don't have the capability of worrying about it, basically. Or make them so small that like it's something that's doable in such a minor sense of just like I already, wrote out the stats when I was like, oh, what if I had a card that did this and what if I had a card that did this? So all the card data is there and everything, and I came up with all the ideas. I just need to put it on a card. So I'm just going to do that as quickly and easily as possible. That's why Nan deck is great, because you just have a Dropbox that says what information do you want here, and I'm like, this one. Like, great. We'll put the cost in the top right, the ability on the bottom, and the name in the top left on every single card I ever make for the rest of my life. And it works. But no, I've definitely spent a lot of time being very fiddly and being like, does that look right? I made a not quite dexterity game, but very similar very recently. And the fact that I didn't have numbers that I could tie to things, and I just had to be like, is this close enough? It was killing me, but I did what I could.
Oh my god, like learning how to finish tasks. I feel like that's the thing that we should talk about because like we do eventually would like to
No.
finish our games, right? Like as much fun as it is to just iterate forever on a project, eventually we should publish it. I know Matt's managed to publish some things. Maybe Matt has some tips for us on how to like finish a project.
Yeah. Yeah. So couple things. My first game took. So I want to provide context. My first game took a little over 3 years to make from start to finish, and I would tell you that a game is never finished until you print it. So I do agree with Christian in the sense that like it's never done. You will always find something to change, in my opinion, or find something like, oh, I could do this, or I want to try this, or so on and so forth. And there's a certain point where you just have to say no. No, it's done, and you just go to print, and you just hope that not just hope, but you have confidence in that all of your play testing and your editing and your iterating and your feedback and all of that stuff in the development course gets you to that final product that you want it to be. And the other thing that I would say is uh, don't be a perfectionist. I struggled with that in my first game because I tried to be a perfectionist, and then when things didn't work out, I was devastated, absolutely devastated. And I had to accept that I cannot be a perfectionist, even though I wanted to be one. Because at the end of the day, when you are making a game, you are developing a complex machine. And a complex machine uh, has a lot of things going on, and things can happen that you don't expect or you don't see or you don't catch because you are one individual. There's a reason why so many games now in the digital space have things like patches and updates and things like that that are constantly coming out, not just once, not just twice, but multiple times. And it's because we're humans. We're not these computers capable of doing everything exactly the way of whatever the intention is every single time forever. It just doesn't work. So I think that helped me a lot. And how that relates to ADHD elements, I when I focused on my first project, I set a lot of short-term goals personally, which helped me out a lot. So the big goal was to publish a game, but the short-term goals were to do this thing, then do this thing, then do this thing. So playtesting, then playtesting with other people, then going to conventions, and then figure out the art, and then figure out the graphic design, and trying to do all of them not separately but almost separately. So like you have that sort of laundry list or that grocery store list of things you want to do for your game, and when I would do the thing I would check it off, and then I would move on, and I would only go back if there was something I really needed to tackle, because at that point I was on to the next step. So I play tested a lot in home, and then at a certain point I was like, nope, now I need to do this type of play testing. And then after I did that, I said, all right, I'm done with that. Now I need to do demoing at conventions, which was still kind of a play test, but like a different kind. And so I mean, some of those other elements still trickled in from time to time, but that was like the way I helped organize it for me. And by making it a little more bite-sized, I was able to kind of accomplish those things. And by setting up that list, I was able to just do things better. And so, I mean, I don't know. I would say that, you know, my second game took a year and a couple months to publish and get out there, and that is almost here now. So it was a much faster time. It's a much smaller game, but it was much. I think it was much faster in general because I kind of had a better idea of what my how to go from point A to point B from beginning to end. I would say also the you know, as I mentioned this before, peer pressure helps when you're posting things on media, when you're doing all this stuff. You're basically telling everyone, hey, there's going to be a thing, you're working on a thing, you're showing it off, and it keeps you excited and it keeps you engaged. The one key thing to that I would make abundantly clear to folks is that, at least for me, with ADHD and a lot of arrogance and just being built the way I am, the thought of failure can be almost self-destructive in some ways if you hit that point, which is why I don't look at my projects as having failure. I don't see failure in these projects, and it's helped me move through them. And so what that means basically is, like, if I don't get something done by tomorrow, that is not a failure. That is a stepping stone to the next point. So I have to get back on track. And so I don't observe those things as failure, because I think, you know, as someone who experiences ADHD and distractions and really has struggled with that over the years, I learned very quickly, like just from my schooling era, that, you know, if I don't succeed and then I give up forever, I will never succeed. And so that's been a tough thing for me to grasp. And so now there is no failure. There's only, all right, well, that was just a stepping stone to what I got to do next. And so that helped me a lot in the second game. I think it helps a lot with things like play testing and things like that. So I would say for any project, don't look at not completing the project as failure. Just look at it as the step into whatever you need to do next to accomplish your goals.
Totally. Yeah, I don't have as much authority to speak on this particular subject, but I do want to echo a lot of what you had said about. I found myself being able to focus on projects for a longer period of time than like past projects, for example, just because of the fact that I've been a lot more public about it, and so there's like that sort of social like, oh, there's actual people who are interested in this, and I probably shouldn't let this thing fizzle out and die. And that, like, part of the ADHD is that I have a really hard time planning things long term. Everything is either now or not now. And so yeah, I similarly break things down. It's like, what do I need to do next? And I'll just do that. And then, so I have a, so like I don't have like my schedule of all the things I need to do up until I get published. I just have do this next, like get this ready for playtest, and that's my list of what I'm what I have to do, and that's not so scary or overwhelming. It's just I need to do that. Sometimes all my list says is figure out what to do next with this, like just very small. Sometimes as simple as schedule a time to do this, like whatever it takes to like get you to that next step.
Yeah, I kind of reflect both of you guys there. So when I first started like seriously considering doing this, I was like, I want to try and get one game all the way. So I had the one game that I had tested already and was like, all right, so the first thing I'll do is I'll, quote unquote, finish the game. And so I got art, just some cheap stuff, but still. And then I was like, all right, and now I guess I'll go to a proto spiel. I think that's what people do next. And so I like found out when the next one was and schedule it. And I'm like, all right, whatever state my game is in at that point, then that's what it'll be when I bring it there. It was really nice to have an external deadline, because anytime I set a deadline for myself, it's basically doesn't exist. But being like, okay, and then I brought it to a proto spiel, and yep, that was it. And I'm like, okay, so what's next? I brought it to an official, big kids play testing event, And so what's next? And I'm like, all right, well, I think the next thing is like, pitching basically, so long as like my game, it, went pretty well at the proto spiel and everything. And so that was a really tough one because most pitching, it's very weird because like sometimes you can like pitch, just via an email, and sometimes you want to like meet them and stuff. But in order to get that deadline that I desperately needed, I was like, all right, I will go to Gen Con. That's like the board game place. And there was even a publisher speed dating event that I narrowly made it into, which I did not expect to because it was like a sign up event thing. But I was like, all right. And that's happening like a year from now, or like, I don't know, like 6 months. And I'm like, all right, so I need to get the game to some presentable point by this exact point in time. Um, and then since I was already going to Gen Con, I'm like, all right, that's a deadline. That's where I need to research who's at Gen Con and who would be interested in my game because that is a specific time period. And so long as I could find a date that couldn't be moved, because even just like I looked up, I was like, okay, how much, ahead of time do you need to schedule an appointment like that, for Gen Con? And I, Googled it and it said, oh, you want it like, forget the number, but it was like 3 months ahead of time or 6 weeks for some. And I was like, okay, well, 3 months. All right. So that's my new deadline. So I can base a deadline on another deadline on another deadline. And that way everything's sort of tied together and I'll have some ways to really like encourage me to like do these things. And it's funny because I did, pitch that game. The speed dating, publisher speed dating didn't go that well. The actual pitch I got there went fine, but I haven't done any pitching for any of my other games just because I can't find a deadline. Like part of it's just because there aren't conventions in the last like year or two for reasons, but I have so much trouble just being like, all right, just give a random like a random publisher an email and you're good. And I'm like, but when? It's like, well, just when you can. It's like, okay, but when's like the best time? It's like just like now. And I'm like, oh well, I'm not really ready now. And I just can't get past that step. It's so hard for me to just be like, just do it now. And I'm like, but there's no reason to now. Isn't later better? Because later will always be better. Because even tomorrow, I'll have one more day to think about if there's anything that I want to change. But if sending an email is the same today versus tomorrow, but the status of the game will be better tomorrow than today, then shouldn't I just keep waiting forever? And I just can't get out of that cycle. I just can't force myself to do something if I don't have a solid deadline to like, stick to. Ugh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah. I very much struggle with the same thing with the publishers. Having external deadlines helps so much. Like whenever there's like a speed pitching event or pitching contest or something, then I am down for that because somebody else has organized a deadline for me. But if I'm left to my own devices, I'm gonna procrastinate on getting rejected as long as possible.
For me,
Which
it's not even about rejection. It's just that I just know that I'm not quite there and I can't. Ugh, sorry, I
So
didn't mean to
no,
interrupt.
you not interrupting at all. I wanted to chime in. I hope I'm not interrupting. The so Christian, I've experienced that in life. I still do occasionally, just in different things. There are I I think I have some tools in my toolbox of experiences that have helped me kind of uh, work past that for different things. First thing, some context. My real life job, to put simply, I work in sales, and the best time to do sales is now. The worst time to do sales is tomorrow. It's the exact opposite. It's the exact opposite of how I exist in my day-to-day life. I don't want to do anything now. I want to do it later. You don't have that mindset in that industry, and so your or even just that sort of task in general. Even as a publisher, it's sort of the same thing. The best time to sell my game is today, not tomorrow, but today. So it kind of ties in. Additionally, I did a lot of improvisation, which is there is no time to wait. You have to go out and you have to make the thing now and do the thing. And I think both of those helped twist my mind a little bit to interact in that a little bit better. I think sometimes in a weird way, I have set things in motion, even if something wasn't perfectly ready. I would send whatever I needed to send anyway to get that ball rolling. And then at that point, I'm locked into whatever the dialogue is. I don't recommend doing this for everything, but if there's a situation where you can be like, "Oh yeah, that's good. Let's do it tomorrow," and then you can figure that out then. But yes, those two things have flipped my ability to interact. Now, that said, there are plenty of things that I am still horrid about. Emails are a nightmare for me. Sending an email is a nightmare for me. It is a nightmare world. I loathe sending emails. I loathe getting emails. When someone says, "Hey, can you put that in an email and send that to me?" I panic. I am like, what am I supposed to put in this email? What is an email? I don't understand. And so there are elements of that still exist in me and will probably always exist in me. And additionally, just putting together an email is something that is like on the farthest stretch of my mind. And I think going back to ADHD stuff, like when I am sending an email, it is just me and this blank sheet. When I'm sending like an instant message or a text message or on Discord or anything like that, it's an active conversation or dialogue. It's active. I'm engaged in it. And an email is like one of the least engaging things in existence. A submission form is one of the least engaging things in existence. It feels like you're alone in it. And so I think that I've had to create peer pressure elements in that as a result, or I've had to that is something I've had to set internal deadlines for, or tell a bunch of people that I am doing the thing or that I have the deadline, which sort of creates this weird deadline for me. Again, I feed off of that pressure from others or telling others I'm going to do the thing personally. So I don't know if any of that was useful or interesting or something to chew over, but I did want to bring that up, that I really resonate with what you're experiencing. And I don't know if you've ever taken the class, something like this before, but I usually recommend taking an improv class to a lot of folks, because I think it helps retool the mind a little bit and just throwing something out into the abyss and seeing what happens. So just throwing it out there and having to do that.
I have actually done a bit of improv. This was like back in middle school or high school. I was part of the comedy sports team, which is like an improv group. Wasn't particularly good, but my sister was also on the team and she was like the captain. So, but no, I do enjoy improv. It's one of the reasons why I like RPGs, or like, that's basically all improv too. And I definitely think that I get what you're saying, and all right. I'll see what I can do with that.
Nice.
This is the second time I've hosted a round table where improv has come up, so I'm definitely going to have to make the next one about improv. Just before we continue, I wanted to note that Jesus had brought up that weekly playtesting on this Discord is like a great, like, sort of social deadline that
Yes.
they've been using, and I totally agree with that. Nothing motivates me more than if I want to make the playtest tomorrow, I gotta finish this tonight, and that gets my butt in gear. And then they also mentioned that their experience hosting escape rooms, that something that they would do is if it hasn't advanced for a bit, like if nothing has changed in a week, then that's like a sign that you need to find some way to progress it. So, and I think that's a valuable way of looking at it, just knowing that you need to make a change. And I'm sorry, I'm starting to bounce around the place. So if anybody has something they'd like to say now before I continue. All right. So like in the same line with the publishers, I too struggle immensely with the emails. So much so that I'm thinking I'm like going down the path of like self-publishing because contacting publishers gives me so much anxiety, and dealing with publishers is giving me so much anxiety. And I'm pretty sure that God, what was the name for it? The rejection sensitivity dysphoria, which is another ADHD thing, is something to do with that. I'm like a little too sensitive to like so many publishers being like, no, thanks, not really. Like they don't even say anything bad, but I'm like they don't like it, they hate it. So like learning to deal with that and yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna figure out a way to get over that anxiety of dealing with publishers. So much so that I think I might have an easier time publishing it myself. I don't know if that's the healthiest approach, but it's I think sometimes I think your journey is just figuring out what works for you, even if like it doesn't quite work for everybody else. Like that's what like this whole journey is all about. Like every single thing I've listened to says you should go with a publisher, but I think that's not gonna work for me.
Katie, I think you're going down a fine path. I think that there's a lot of different paths in the industry, but also like you I don't, I think I mentioned this earlier. I don't think there is a failure choice here, right? There's just different choices in these situations. I went down the self-publisher route because I wanted to learn about the industry, but also similarly, I didn't want to submit to a publisher. I also, if I wanted to make the game based on my ideas and what I wanted to do, and I wanted to learn all the different things. And I thought also, what's a better way to kind of contend with my own ADHD and focus issues and ability to do tasks by doing a task and figuring out how to do that. I thought that would be really fun. So no, I think you're going down a great path, and if that path changes, that's still great. I don't think there is a bad path that you can take personally, as long as for folks, there's not a bad path to take as long as you're being healthy for yourself and the people in your life are healthy and happy, and you're healthy and happy. Then that's all great.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. Yeah, I feel like this is why people with ADHD are so many more times likely to start their own businesses because like it's very stimulating to do all that stuff yourself and it's very like exciting and it's very like and in some ways it's part of ADHD is like having like some issues socially with people like it feels like they're moving too slow or like it feels like you have this urge to interrupt them, which is why I thought it was really funny when all three of us were interrupting each other earlier. It's just so like sometimes if you have ADHD, sometimes the best path forward is just do like the thing like yourself instead of like working with a publisher going down the path that other people have taken, and that's perfectly valid and fine.
Yeah, I kind of go at it the other way. I'm like, oh, I'm done. Here, I'm done with this one. Here, you take it. I'm gonna work on something else now.
That's totally fair as well.
Oh my god, that's a power I really want to have.
Well, it's just like once you hand it to a publisher, you're not allowed to make changes anymore. And I'm like, good, there, I did it. I'm done. Please take it from me. But if I had to do everything myself, I'd just be too tempted to just keep making changes and keep making changes. But but no, that's what publishers are for. Get them to deal with it.
One thing, this is kind of off topic, but I've been thinking of because I think this was kind of touched on a little bit earlier on. I just want to bring up that one of the best tools that folks can put in their toolbox, if they're able to, for folks listening in or just later on, if you're wondering about all these things we're talking about and you're thinking about them and you're like, well, I don't know if I have this or I don't know if I'm contending with these things. I always recommend doing your own research, of course, but don't be afraid or hesitate to speak to a mental health professional. It's a really big step to do that. It took me years to do that, and I wish I had done it years before I had done it, or I wish someone had helped me get to that point. I had to do it on my own. It was very hard and it took a long time. And so, if you're thinking about it, or if you haven't talked to folks about that, like get an opinion from someone who knows their stuff. And if you don't like that opinion, go to someone else and get their opinion. Get multiple opinions, build a roster of that insight, collect that information. I think the best tool you can have is the advice of a professional, or someone that or someone who has experienced similar things. And so I did want to bring that up and point that out because I think it's a very important and powerful thing to do. I've met a lot of people in life that kind of just dealt with this stuff alone, and that was it. And I think just making it really clear, we can do that. You can do that thing if you have the ability, if you have that support, if you have the ability to do it on your own. Please do that. If you're not 100%, just go for it. It can't hurt. The doctor isn't gonna yell at you and be like, "How dare you look at me?" or "How dare you come to me? I'm a doctor." They will help get you to where you need to be.
Oh yeah, totally. Like reach out for help. Whatever network works best for you, like getting help from other people is such like a valuable thing, and developing that muscle and that skill of of allowing yourself to request help, because yeah, you don't have to do this alone, and it's so important that you be able to, that you have the confidence to like be like, yeah, I'm worth it too. Like like you're a valuable person and you deserve help, and everybody needs help sometimes. I'm sure you've helped people sometimes, so just ask for help. And yeah, if you can, therapy and doctors are like excellent resources, especially for ADHD. Like I don't think any of us are doctors, so we can't like help diagnose you or anything. The doctor is going to be able to do that. And if you have the ability to get a doctor, and like medication is not for everybody, but for some people it works. Like I'm in the process of trying to figure out what works for me, but like yeah, definitely seek a doctor. It could like change your life and for the better. So highly recommend. We are approaching time, but I'm okay to go a little longer if other people are okay with that.
Sure. Hey, Katie, I just want to bring this up. So, Jesus had brought something up in the text channel, just regarding, maybe is talking to someone and taking up that slot from someone else. They also mentioned imposter syndrome is wild, and it is. Just for those out there, if you're not sure, if you think that maybe you're not worthy of those things, or someone else is more worthy of those things, you are worthy. Do the thing. Your health and your happiness are so important. Seek them and pursue them, and I promise you, you doing that isn't going to uh, impede someone's own journey to find those things. As long as everyone's being respectful toward one another. So please do that. Don't worry that booking that appointment is going to stop someone from getting the appointment they need. I promise you it won't.
Yes, yes. You are worth it, okay? Like it's like yes, absolutely. Imposterism is a very serious issue, and like you are valuable and important just as you are, and like there is like unconditional thing, okay? So please get the please get the help that you can and that you deserve, okay? Because you do deserve it. Yeah. So I don't. Let's see. I said that we could keep going, but to be honest, I don't know if I have a lot of other things to talk about right now, unless anybody else has something else that they'd like to bring up.
Thanks for hosting, Katie.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Well, I hope that y'all get something out of it. I'm really glad that we are able to record this one, because I think another part of ADHD is just like maybe just completely forgetting that we were having this round table. So maybe you listening to this is maybe you're one of those people, and I hope this helped you. So thank you very much, and thank you so much. I feel like I tricked Matt into hosting this round table because Matt gave a lot of really relevant experience.
No, you inspired me to attend by hosting it. I do not speak about this part of me often, or at all, really. And so communicating it more openly is a good thing. And, I think that one of the things I've had to realize over the years, just sort of going back, is that, by not communicating it, people that may be going through similar things, I'm not able to tell them my experience because I'm not communicating it. And so, being more open about that stuff is something that I'm working on myself personally. So thank you for that opportunity, and thank you for hosting this. It's been awesome.
Yeah, that's why I try to be very open about my experiences, because so many times I'm like, I find out that I'm trans or something, or I find out I have ADHD. I'm like, you all have been dealing with this too, and nobody said anything? I thought I was just a weirdo. But no, like a lot of people struggle with this stuff. A lot of people are going through the same experiences as you, and like, and so you're valid, okay? So thank you all for coming and for sharing your experiences and your insights, and I'm incredibly grateful as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.